All right. Tough sentence.
Very tough.
The Broncos are the first team in NFL history to win the Super Bowl, then miss the playoffs for 8 straight seasons.
Woo.
There is no precedent for the hard right turn that the Denver Broncos have made since 2015.
Man, when you're looking back at it, Zach, after we acquired Peyton Manning, it seemed like the show was never going to end, that we were going to continue to have opportunities to go to more Super Bowls, and Brock Osweiler was there, and it was like, okay, he's been behind Peyton. He helped us get to a Super Bowl. Like, it's going to continue to just happen, and we're going to continue to be in the playoffs and have an opportunity to win another Super Bowl. But, man, we've been on a drought for 8 years.
Yeah, and it's hard to reconcile because, Phil, when I first moved here in 2017, there would be statements like, and they were true, impactful statements. Hey, more Super Bowl appearances than losing seasons since Pat Bowlen bought the Denver Broncos. No back-to-back losing seasons. How do you not have back-to-back losing seasons since Mr. Bowlen bought the team, in the early 80s? I mean, that's incredible consistency. And the things we say about the Pittsburgh Steelers, that used to be said about the Broncos.
That was the Denver Broncos.
Yeah. I remember Colin Cowherd used to say Denver Broncos are the Pittsburgh Steelers of the Mountain Time Zone. And Stink would talk about, hey, when they're doing the TV setup, just put Broncos in the middle of that second slot, and they're going to be on national TV. And
Broncos were talked about all the time. All the time. And we kind of got pampered because of it, spoiled. Just like with the Denver Nuggets right now, you get spoiled and you don't think the ride's ever going to end, and you're going to be excited every single year. And, man, for us as Bronco fans, 8 years of a drought of not winning or having a winning season, not touching the playoffs, not even a wild card.
Yeah.
It's pretty insane.
It is. And you have to ask, okay, how did the Broncos get to this point?
Yeah.
And it's not just one thing. And I was thinking of this earlier today because Pro Football Network, that's who it was, Pro Football Network put out a list of the worst NFL coaching hires of all time. Okay? Of all time.
Yeah.
Urban Meyer was number one. I mean, what a disaster that was.
Yeah, it was.
I'm sure you were hearing stuff when you were in the league about Urban, what was going down there in Jacksonville.
Zach, we played him. Houston, that was our first game of the year, was Urban Meyer's first year as a head coach, and we blew him out. I think it was like 44-12.
Wow.
That was the start of his coaching career back in the NFL.
Yeah.
And, man, the stories that Coach Urban Meyer, it was pretty much based around Coach Urban Meyer was wild.
Yeah.
It was wild.
It was wild from the outside. Just looking at it. He didn't last the season, but you get to number 2 on the list. You get to number 2 on the list. It's Nathaniel Hackett. Number 2 in Pro Football Network's top worst hires in NFL history. And that's during this era. And you look at, Paxton. We were talking about Paxton a couple weeks ago for some reason. Paxton Lynch, there is an argument to be made that he is the single most unique bust at the quarterback position ever, where other guys had an opportunity to go out there and fail.
Opportunity.
Paxton, as a first-round pick, started 4 games, and that's during this era of Broncos football.
Yeah, that's wild.
And then I think of something else. After the Russ trade, paying him with 2 years left on the contract, what is now the worst contract in NFL history. So during this stretch of football for the Denver Broncos,
a lot of bad decisions, Zach. A lot of bad decisions, one after another. That's going to lead you to not having wins in the NFL, man.
Yeah. So since 2015, you literally had one of the worst coaching hires of all time. You have one of the most unique busts at the quarterback position of all time.
Yeah.
And you have the worst contract in NFL history on your books. This is how you get there. It's just, man, it's self-inflicted. It's not having the right leadership in place. And
I feel like that's the key one right there, right? Not having the right leadership in place. And it comes down to, for the longest, we didn't have an owner. And that's where it starts. Pat Bowlen was, gone, and rest in peace for him. But after that, they didn't have an owner, and that hurt us. That set us back a lot right there. And then all of a sudden you start having all these decisions being made, and they're bad decisions. Nobody to kind of hold anybody accountable, and you kind of just have a domino effect, and the ball keeps rolling downhill, and now we're in the drought.
Yeah, and what's even and I'm just going to mention this because it's right there. It's low-hanging fruit. I'm not doing a campaign to get this guy fired at all, okay? But 2 of those 3 decisions, the general manager is still employed here in Denver.
Yeah.
And are both of his hands, George Payton's hands, at 10-2 on the Broncos steering wheel right now? No, they're not. But, I mean, Phil, in 9.9 out of 10 cases, the GM who does that gets fired.
You would think, right? And of course, we're not saying, hey, he needs to have his job revoked right now. But no, when you go back in recent history in football and basketball and hockey, it's a performance-based business. Sports is a performance-based business, and if you do not perform at a high level and have your teams winning, okay, consistently having winning seasons, you are going to get fired. At least that's what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And for someone like George, it's just a head scratcher because I know he's a good guy, and I know he's done a lot of good.
Yes.
Okay, but it's not showing up on the scoreboard.
No.
It's not showing up where it's supposed to be showing up. Right? We've talked about it with Coach Prime. He's brought so much attention and so much money to the program. But if he doesn't win this year, it's not going to be good for him.
No.
And for George, it's like you haven't won since you've been a GM, but yet you're still here and everybody else is gone.
I know.
Crazy.
It is. It is crazy. It is crazy. And, hopefully this thing is starting to stabilize. And on the RamosLaw.com text line, someone says, put your name on it, give you a shout out. It says, Zach, how is the Russell Wilson contract worse than the Deshaun Watson contract? I'll tell you. Deshaun Watson's going to play for them this year.
Yeah, he's still there.
Deshaun Watson is 28 years old. We don't know what's next in the Deshaun Watson story. Russell Wilson never threw a pass on the Broncos contract. So if Watson goes out there and throws a touchdown pass week 1, it will already be better than the Russell deal. You know what I'm saying?
He's still on the roster. Let's just start right there. Deshaun Watson is still on the roster. And like you say, he is going to play this year. It's already better.
It's already better. And who knows what's next? I mean, maybe he's just broken, but maybe not. That guy was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL before
he was slinging it.
Everything went down. So it's unfortunate. And then now, the question is, those are, in my opinion, the 3 biggest hatchet wounds to this organization since Super Bowl 50 that has the Denver Broncos in a position where they're the only team in NFL history to win a Super Bowl, then miss the playoffs for 8 straight years. It's the hiring of Hackett, it's the drafting of Lynch, and the ripple effect that each of these decisions had. Because I do think the drafting of Lynch avoided Josh Allen. So the ripple, and I can't prove that, but I believe that. But the hiring of Hackett, being one of the worst hires of all time, the drafting of Lynch, one of the most unique busts in NFL history, playing only 4 games, and Russell Wilson's mega deal with 2 years left. I think those are the 3 worst single decisions during this era. And now, to spin it forward, the question I have is, what are the 3 things now that the Broncos have to get right in order to get out of the muck and mire that they've been in?
Number 1 is quarterback. That right there in itself is going to take care of a lot of problems if your quarterback is semi-decent.
Yeah.
Right? Just if you can keep us in games, if you can make it competitive, it's going to help us out more. I'm going to say the next one is Sean Payton.
Sean Payton.
Number 2.
Yep.
It goes hand in hand.
Yeah.
We need some of that Sean Payton magic of what he had in New Orleans. We need to see that coach this year, the play caller that's creative, that puts all his players in the right situations to be successful. All right, you don't have Russell Wilson to blame anymore.
Yeah.
He's not your crutch anymore. Now you have a young quarterback that you handpicked that you need to go out there, groom him the right way so that he can help us win games. And the third one,
this is
that's
tough.
a tough one.
This is tough because I had the same thought this morning sitting at my kitchen table. What are the 3 things the Broncos have to get right? Coach, quarterback. How about this?
I think I know what you're going to say.
You do? All right. So I'm going to write it down.
Okay.
Okay. I'm going to write it down. It's written down. What do you think? What do you think I'm going to say?
It's going to be the ownership, Greg Penner.
Yes. And that's a box that I believe is the closest thing to being checked. Bo Nix Bo Nix is such a question mark. Such a question. Sean in Denver is still somewhat of a question mark. We know what he did in New Orleans, but you don't get Bronco credit for what you did in 2009, in 2024.
Nope.
So we can be optimistic about Sean, but he's still a question mark. And I think the of the three that are closest to being or having that box being checked, I think it's the ownership department. And we talked about it last week. I think that's the most important of any leg of the chair that holds up an organization. The sturdiest leg is ownership. It's got the longest lasting power. Coaches will go, quarterbacks will go, but Greg Penner's going to be here for decades. And I think that I think the good news is that of the three things that you have to get right, one of them I think is already being checked in real time, and that's ownership. The other two, we'll see.
Yeah, I like that, Zach. I like it a lot. I mean, it's going to start with the ownership. To me, it's going to come down to this. Can Greg Penner make those hard decisions as well? Can Greg Penner make those decisions, all right, that sets him apart with other great owners where it's like, if it's not working out with Sean, can you get rid of him? If it's not working out with George, can you get rid of him? You know, those are the questions that we're gonna be asking Greg Penner if it doesn't pan out for the Denver Broncos this year. And it's not necessarily about wins.
Yeah.
It's about the quarterback position, and if he's found the guy, or if we get a first-round draft pick yet again, the first pick, and we're going to talk about another quarterback. Those are the situations where it's like, you can't have Sean here again if we're talking about getting another quarterback.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That if for some reason, and I say for some reason as if it's like probable, it's more likely than not that the Bo Nix experience won't work. That's what history and the probability of it all will say. That it's more likely that Bo Nix won't work out long-term in Denver than it is likely that he will work out long-term. And if he doesn't, what does that mean for Sean Payton? And will Sean Payton even be allowed to go back into the draft and pick a quarterback again? And would he even want to? Would you probably, like Denver has done in the past, kind of overcorrect and do the opposite of what you're doing? So you miss on a first-round quarterback, you go veteran route, you know? And I believe Bo Nix will be the only first-round pick that Sean Payton will make here in Denver.
Yeah, I do too. Okay,
we'll see. I mean, we'll see. And see, but this is why this opens up the can of worms of, like, the clarity with Bo this year. Because part of the clarity with Bo, it's tied to Sean Payton's hip.
Yeah.
And we're still waiting for Sean Payton clarity.
Oh, man, so many things. But I know that we're going to get the clarity, you know, with Bo. It may not be week 1, week 2, but we are going to definitely see Bo Nix out there as a starting quarterback at some point.
Yeah.
And it's going to be sooner rather than later. We're just going to have to be patient.